Chairman, would you like me to start the meeting?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Jeff Brooks, the acting leader of West Berkshire Council, and welcome to this evening's executive meeting. Before I go into the meeting proper, I would like to ask members of the public not to come forward and talk to the members of executive or members of council unless they have indicated that they are happy for you to do so. I think that bit of space is quite useful in case tempers get a little bit high. Most council chambers normally have a gallery and a separate entrance for public. And at a time when there have been some dreadful incidents involving MPs and some councillors, I hope you will respect that for me. After the apologies, which I'll take now, I will also be reading out a statement. This will be on the community infrastructure levy. It is a statement, it's not a debating item. I won't be taking questions or any other remarks, but the statement will show the way forward for what we plan to do in terms of SIL. So starting off then, apologies please, Nikki or Sadie.
We have apologies from councillors Janine Lewis and Ross McKinnon.
Thank you very much indeed. So, as I say, an extra item before the minutes, before we get into the meeting, and I know there has been some public who attended tonight for this very reason. Members of public, press, in April 2015, this council adopted its SIL charging policy. The Community Infrastructure Levy, SIL, was developed to enable councils to charge developers in order to receive payments towards a district, county, borough, or metropolitan areas' infrastructure needs associated with new development. It was an adaptation of the old Section 106 charging regime, although S106 charges are still levied in certain cases that I won't go into here. Many, in fact, most councils up and down the country elected not to pursue householders who were developing an extension to their home, building a new one after demolishing their old house, or building an annex. I will refer to these as householder developments or householders. There are effectively three different categories: homeowners, householders extending their home; homeowners building an annex at their home; individuals building their own home, perhaps having demolished the old one. Disqualifying events were incorporated into the legislation to prevent abuse of the system by developers masquerading as individuals building or extending a house. Our charging policy stated, and still states to this day, that there will be no SIL charge for self-built housing, residential annexes, and extensions. That is what the legislation intended. But the devil was in the detail. I have spoken to many people about the legislation, including a number of agents, as well as the consultants we have engaged and who are currently reviewing our SIL process. All of them agree that the legislation is poor. According to that legislation, householders must be assessed for SIL and then must complete a complex range of forms provided by central government in order to be deemed exempt from SIL charges. Many councils decided not to ask householders developing an extension, replacement house or annex to fill out all the complex paperwork. They understood that the process was over confusing and easy to get wrong. They used a common sense approach, deeming the applicant to be exempt through a light touch assessment regime. But in West Berkshire, instead of implementing a light touch approach, and assisting the applicant to complete the forms correctly and thus achieve a zero-rated seal charge as intended within the legislation, this council and via the then seal management team implemented what can best be described as a zero tolerance policy. If the forms were not submitted in a timely manner or were incorrect, then the charge was levied. Invoices were dispatched and the collection of the charge was undertaken. Although within the legislation, the applicant could appeal to the council as the charging authority, we appear here to have been inconsistent in how we reacted to such appeals. And there was no official internal appeal process developed here that enabled the application to be properly reviewed, perhaps with member involvement. The house owner therefore had no formal way that they could catch up and complete the paperwork correctly. We determined that they owed the money and payments were chased with what I might charitably call an excess of enthusiasm. The sums of money involved were considerable. A relatively small extension, perhaps one reception room and a couple of bedrooms, could be assessed as over £20,000 payable in sealed charges, often some 30% of the cost of the extension itself. West Berkshire Council did not develop an enforcement policy that would guide the way in which charges were collected, and the council chased debts down with a process that, whilst lawful, was at times unpleasant and overzealous. Whilst the legislation allows for a notice of debt to be posted on the property of a developer that had not paid their assessed seal charge, common sense should have prevailed, and the council should have understood that such a tactic was only provided within the legislation to enable councils to place such notices on the premises of builders and stroke developers if they were behind in payments, not to place them on the premises of householders who were meant to be exempt from the charge. Basic common sense, as well as a sense of common decency, should have prevented our officers, West Berkshire Council officers, from visiting an ordinary resident, not a profit-making developer, and affixing a notice on their gatepost, which the legislation forbids the householder from taking down until the debt is paid, with that notice stating the amount of the debt for all their neighbours, visitors, and passers-by to see. But in West Berkshire, we did exactly this, and we certainly have one example where our officers posted such notices on the gatepost of an ordinary resident. Without a sensible and sensitive enforcement policy, this council allowed its seal team to threaten householders, shouting through letterboxes if the householder would not come to the door, placing legal charges against their properties, and chasing them down relentlessly for late seal payments. And these payments would not have been chargeable if these same people had completed the necessary and very complex forms to achieve the exemption from the payment that the legislation anticipated and our website stated that they were entitled to. In 32 years as a councillor, this is the most egregious example I have ever experienced of a council using the letter of the law to its advantage and to the detriment of what should have been a common objective to assist residents in achieving an intended outcome in terms of fees that should be paid. It may have been legally correct according to a dreadfully poorly drafted piece of legislation, but it was morally reprehensible. Now, I've been fighting to put this right since I returned to the council at a by-election in early 2018. I put the blame firmly at the door of the last Conservative administration. They agreed the assessment process, they agreed and supported the collection regime, they doubled down time and time again as people protested, they ostracised their own backbenchers when they resisted this unfair and entirely inappropriate process. In short, this episode has been a stain on the good name of this council. So tonight, I am stating that we will introduce a process to refund and/or cancel charges, seal payments, surcharges, and interest charges that householders building their own domestic properties for their purposes were forced to pay and are still liable to pay where they simply filled out their forms incorrectly or were completely remiss in providing that documentation. This will be done by introducing an enforcement policy which will enable householders who believe they have been unfairly assessed to apply to have such charges cancelled. This disgraceful episode ends here, starting tonight. I've instructed officers to bring a report to the next meeting of this executive to ensure that no further demands will be made of householders who simply want to extend or redevelop their homes. By the next executive meeting, we will publish a process whereby any householders who have undertaken development that has become still liable due to mistakes they may have made following the process, where they will be able to apply to a panel of members and officers at this council to have their CIL charges reviewed and to have these repaid or cancelled wherever it is appropriate to do so. We have set aside a considerable sum of money for this. That money has been collected and sits in our CIL ledgers, but it must be paid back or cancelled if it has been levied to householders who would have been exempt if they have filled out their paperwork in good time and correctly. Now, although this will affect some of the developments we may wish to deliver in the coming years, we could not, in all consciousness, deliver those developments with money that the council was not reasonably entitled to collect if forms are being completed correctly and on time. This issue has taken far too long to put right and cost much, much more in time and distraction than could ever be collected from a wide range of residents who have been treated disgracefully and sometimes almost as criminals by this council. Never again will this council act in such a way whilst the Liberal Democrats are in control of it. We have much to do as a new administration, but one thing is non-negotiable with us, an overriding sense of fairness in how we treat our residents. I'm completely confident that the values of our CEO, our executive directors and our service directors align with this administration. Our new council strategy is built upon principles that include acting with integrity and ensuring that all decisions we make are lawful, transparent and impartial. That we will listen to our customers and residents and do our best for them, and that we will always treat people fairly. We move forward together, and we will deliver very good services to the people of West Berkshire, always based on integrity, fairness, and doing what is right. Thank you. No, I'm not taking any comments at all. I'm moving on. I said I want comments. Okay, the minutes, please, of the last executive meeting. To approve and correct, we record the minutes of the meeting of the executive held on the 8th of February 2024, pages 9 to 14. Do I have a proposer, please, for acceptance? Thank you, Councillor Gaines. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cottingham. Is that agreed? Please show your hands. The minutes, thank you very much indeed. They are agreed. Do we have any declarations of interest? No, Councillor McBowen.
I'd like to declare that I'm deputy leader of the opposition group of Conservative councillors of West Berkshire. And I'd like to mention that I think it's absolutely appalling that you've taken the opportunity to castigate the past administration.
Please, I said I would not take comments.
Without giving a right
I said
of
I would not
response.
take comments. You have a right of reply outside of this chamber. I made it very clear to you, acting leader of the opposition tonight. Right, we're into public questions, please, I think.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, sorry, just in relation to agenda items 10 and 11, just declare an interest as an employee of Sovereign Housing, so I'll leave the meeting at that point.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dillon. Back to public questions then, please. And Sadie will start putting them on the screen. The first one up, Ms. Goatley, would you like to come forward to the lectern, please?
Hello, Mr. Goatley. Thank you very much for your question. So in answer to your question, no, it has not. The programme is under review to take account of the goals and priorities of the administration, and the work by previous consultants will feed into and inform any future plans for the site. Do you have a supplementary?
Sorry, thank you very much for the answer. A small one. Do you think the money has been well spent in that case? The number of consultants we've had and still back in review again. I appreciate you've got different views to the opposition there, but Has it been money well spent?
I think that's the same question, Mr. Goatley.
No, I asked if it'd been.
You might get the same answer.
Well, I might do.
As I said, Mr. Goatley, the work done by the previous consultants will feed in to the future plans of the site and help to inform those. So there is a value to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question. Next question, please. Okay, this one is Mr. Garvey present.
Mr. Garvey is present.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And so the leader of council will answer this. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your question, Mr. Garvey. I haven't met with Thames Water, but members of the administration have. Councillors Gaines and Councillor Stuart Gawley, as the responsible portfolio holders, met with Thames Water in December and actually are meeting again with them tomorrow. The items that were discussed at that time were the sewage treatment works in Thatcham and also the pumping at London Road. And we are continuing discussions tomorrow around Newport Road. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. As an MP, you would be expected to vote on things along party lines, typically. And Tim Farron today announced or refused.
Mr. Garvey, that broke up. Try again, sir, please.
I don't know if something. I think it's on the same team.
You are breaking up, sir. I'm sorry about this. We really are only hearing every other 2 words. Try one more time and then I might have to move on, sir. Mr. Garvey, can you hear me? Try again, please. One more time. If you switch off your video, Mr. Garvey, we may find the sound channel better.
Okay, my question essentially is when
I'm ever so sorry. It's not working for you. If you review the YouTube later, you'll realize that we just can't hear what you're saying, sir. I think if you don't mind, you could put in a written supplementary and Councillor Dillon will pick it up.
Absolutely, Chairman. Happy to do that.
Thank you. I'm moving on to the next question necessarily. Mr. Goatley, you're back at the lectern.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Goatley. So I don't think that would be true to say. We feel there's a clear direction for taking forward the regeneration of Bond Riverside and the key sites that sit within it. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for that. Yes, should do. Would it not be true to say that the London Road Industrial Estate regeneration, which has been going on for 20 years nearly, every time it has basically fallen down on infrastructure and you just haven't got the infrastructure there. And I cannot see any way that you can have a credible plan without infrastructure. Is that possible?
As I said, we have got a clear direction for the regeneration of Bond Riverside, and that will be coming to executive in May. So we'll be able to share more detail then.
Is direction the new word for plan?
Thank you, Mr. Goatley. Okay. Okay. Councillor Dillon, calling you, sir, to answer the question from Mr. Garvey.
Yeah, lovely. Hopefully Mr. Garvey can hear me clearly. So thank you for your question, Mr. Garvey. The Local Government Act 1972, Section 85, states that when a council member fails to attend any meeting for 6 consecutive months from the date of their last attendance, they cease to be a member of the authority unless council accepts a reason for the failure to attend before the 6-month period. I remain appointed as the leader of the council and lead on public safety portfolio. I most recently attended the Joint Public Protection Committee meeting on Monday, the 11th of March, and obviously I'm present at today's meeting too. Do you have a supplementary, sir?
I do. Can you hear me this time?
That sounds
Okay.
better.
I don't know if you could give me a little bit of latitude to ask the supplementary for my last question. All I was going to ask on the last question was, obviously, as a member of parliament, you'll be expected to vote on party lines. There's not really that much you can do as a member of parliament on a local issue, whereas as the leader of the council, you are effectively the most powerful politician in West
There a
Berkshire.
question, please, Mr. Garvey? Sorry.
There is, and as the lead Florida authority, you know, what do you think that you could do as an MP that you couldn't achieve with Thames Water as leader of the council?
I'm not going to answer a hypothetical situation regarding running for a different position, Mr. Garvey. Happy to answer any questions relating to West Berkshire Council.
And Mr. Garvey, your question E supplementary, I think we're on to now, sir.
Sure. I mean, it was a question about West Berkshire, but okay. So the supplementary for this one would be, is there a reason why you wouldn't step down as leader of the council and just be reappointed following the general election? Would that not be a better course of action than this kind of almost, I don't want to say charade because that sounds too harsh, and I don't want to say that. It just seems like a very difficult situation for the council and for the reputation of the council to have. This, if you Google, this would be the very first ever case of somebody taking a sabbatical from a leadership position of a council or a government. It just hasn't happened anywhere before. So
I think you posed your question, sir.
Yeah.
You got the question. Councillor Dillon.
Which one would you like me to answer at those supplementaries? It's not the first time a sabbatical has been taken. I'm aware of a Conservative portfolio holder, so a senior position, taking a sabbatical to go to lecture on history in America. So it might be worth Googling there. But my group are happy with how we have set these arrangements up. Good governance is being followed, and we've taken officers' advice that this is a legal route for us to be able to take. And in Councillor Jeff Brooks, we have an excellent acting leader who is delivering on the priorities for the residents of West Berkshire, along with our manifesto commitments where we were elected in May last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On to the next question, please. Mr. Goatley, you're back at the lectern.
Thanks for your question, Mr. Goatley. So groundwater conditions are broadly commensurate with what would be expected on an industrial estate. The purpose of the monitoring was not to resolve any contamination, but to identify it to be considered by any future proposed development. As and when proposals come forward for development on sites on Bond Riverside, they will be evaluated on their own merits, including around sustainable drainage proposals, where this information may inform that process. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for that answer, but yes, I really do have one this time. What does the Surface Water and Flooding Act 2010 say about passing pollution onto other people's land?
I will come
We've
back to
had
your
this for a
notes,
year.
Mr. Goatley.
Well, I think you've got a direct service director next to you, should know the answer.
Mr. Goatley, we'll see whether Mrs. Lawrence wants to. No, I think we'll send you a written answer.
Thank you, Mr. Goatley.
I do understand why, Mr. Goatley. I mean, you know, I'm not sure even a highly professional, well-experienced executive director keeps all the legislation in their mind. I don't even think our monitoring officer does. So, you know, we'll move on. Next question, please. Okay, this is with me. Yes. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. I don't know if you answer it. I do want to go on the record to thank you, Councillor Brooks, for everything you've done in the last month. In my opinion, and I'm sure the opinion of others, you've done more in the last month than what your administration as a party has done in 9 months since you took, or 10 months now since you took over.
Mr. Garvey, you're not going to schmooze me,
No, I'm not smooth. Look,
Being schmoozed by flannel, sir.
is this how it's going to go? That we can't answer?
Sir.
You're allowed your preamble, but we're not allowed the preamble.
Sir.
So just don't worry about the supplementary. You're not
Okay.
going to answer it. You're just going to fob us off anyway. So whatever.
Thank you. And for the avoidance of doubt, we stand as a team. We don't have prima donnas in our team.
And fall as a team.
All equal. I happen to be at the moment first among equals, but we move on together. Thank you very much. That was the next question. Okay, let's end a question. Oh, good. All right, lively. Excellent. Thank you very much. Petitions. We have petitions, I believe, this evening. Drum roll, Councillor Barnett. I do.
Well, good evening, executive officers. Acting leader, you know me as old, and although I'm presenting 3 petitions tonight, you'll be pleased to hear I won't be taking advantage of my 3 separate 3 minutes. I will be trying to combine them in 3 minutes, bearing in mind, of course, that we've got 2 town council elections tonight, and I'm sure many of you will want to do what I'm doing, be knocking up the electorate to make sure that they're voting. Now back to the petitions.
Phrase, I think knocking on doors to get people to go and vote. Back to you.
Okay, we are all aware how speeding of vehicles along residential roads can have a great impact on our day-to-day lives. But some roads, and I repeat, some roads require more than the standard 30-mile-an-hour limit, which is in place in many built-up areas. In the case of the 3 petitions that I'm presenting tonight, signed, I might add, by 131 residents, cover 3 particular roads which have been used as rat runs for many years. Queen's Road, York Road and Boundary Road within Eastfield's part of the Newbury area. Known some more than when King's Road was closed over the last year or so. For periods, of course, that was. A 20-mile-an-hour was put in place decades ago, but not monitored, not enforced, and the signage currently in place not adequate and easily missed by drivers. And of course, we must offer our thanks to our dear friend, the ex-leader of Portsmouth City Council, who was actually responsible for this at the time when he was a member of West Berks Council. These petitions specifically ask for more improved signage, additions to traffic calming, whether cushions, chicanes or SIDs that would deter drivers, whether cars, van, lorry or motorcyclists, to keep within the 20-mile-an-hour limit, especially as many of the houses in the said roads were built in the early part of the 20th century, with direct access onto the highway and no pavements alongside, with very little visibility for the drivers and the pedestrians. I would hope these petitions will seriously be considered by the appropriate officers in the forthcoming months. Thank you, Leader, Executive.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. And we're into our items as timetabled in the forward plan. First one up, capital financing report, financial year 23-24, quarter 3 outturn. Councillor Cottingham to introduce, I believe.
Thank you very much, Chair. So yes, this is a report which I don't believe requires any voting for. However, it's always good to get an update of where we are regarding the capital expenditure programme, albeit we're only 2 weeks before the end of the financial year. However, the initial plan was to spend 70.6 million this financial year. It looks as if we'll be spending just under 58 million. That underspend of 12.9, within that, there is a reprofiling of 3.2 million into 24-25. Again, what's an item to highlight within the report is the weighted average cost of borrowing long-term for the council. That's at 3.5%. We've mentioned, discussed this previously, the fact that there is a resource risk which we face as a council, recruiting project managers to execute our plan. It is something which we're looking to do so from a recruitment perspective going forward. And also just to highlight in section 6.8 is the man to my left, our section 151 officer is confident that the CapEx is affordable in the long-term plan for the council.
Thank you, Councillor Cottingham. I'm happy to second this. Are there any other comments at this stage from executive members and from the opposition? Councillor Back.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I'm disappointed to see the delay in spending on education services, £1.9 million. I wonder if something could be, if either Councillor Cottingham or perhaps Councillor Codling can talk about the resource issues that seem to have prevented the iCollege alternative education and the SEMH primary provision being delayed. Could you?
We're conferring at the moment, Councillor Berg. You'd have a couple more, yeah, I get that.
As I previously mentioned, we are actively looking to recruit into these areas for the project management to make sure that will be delivering in the future our plans regarding educational services CapEx.
Thank you. Did Councillor Codling or even Anne-Marie Dodds wish to add anything?
No, we'll give a written reply.
We'll provide you with an update. I know it's a question. We'll provide you with an update. I think that's fair.
Thank you.
You had another couple, didn't you?
Yeah, but just an observation, if I may. Councillor Cottingham said you're recruiting project resource, but of course all these projects are backing up, and you've got the near £4 million that you haven't yet that you're not planning to spend anytime soon on Falkland. So you might need more than the project resource that you're recruiting to catch up.
I don't think I want to let that statement just lie there. On Falkland, you said, and we'll say it again this evening, probably 2 or 3 times, we're getting on with it as fast as we possibly can. Okay, back to you.
No, it was just an observation. I don't need a response.
Okay, fine. Yeah, okay. And then you had another
two more points. First of all, just what does Castle's the ways of working project at Castle School? The comment is that the project has stopped. That doesn't suggest that there's any. Okay,
Councillor Codling is coming back on that.
I'm not aware that it's stopped. I think I've got a project board next week.
That's what it says.
It's coming up.
That's what it says.
There is a corporate programme board. You'll remember that board next week. And
okay,
that is on there, and it's not stopped from the papers I received from Anita Stanbury today, Councillor Burke.
Okay, maybe somebody needs to read the papers.
Okay. And another one?
Equally, yes. Just for my understanding, what is the Speenham land 2 full-time employee project? What is that?
I must admit, I don't know the Speenham Land project off the top of my head, but it's referring to 2 full-time employees.
Okay, does Councillor Codling or Anne-Marie Dodds?
Again, we're going to
written answer again, Councillor Burke.
Okay, I'll help you out. It's two forms of entry.
We're moving to two
Maybe
forms
you
of entry.
need to read the papers before they come out.
Okay. Noted. Moving on. Any other
No,
questions
not
or
now, thank
queries?
you.
Thank you very much. Then I think we're being asked to note this report. It's been proposed, seconded. Members noted? Happy? Please nod, show. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to, I think, number 8. Now, number 8 is Councillor Sturgis is going to introduce this. There is an adaptation of the recommendation that I've jumped through number 7, have I?
Yes.
No, I'm into numbers. I know the one I mean. It's the Berkshire Prosperity Board, and Councillor Sturgis will introduce it. I will then propose a couple of extra recommendations to those on the report you have. I don't know if those recommendations can be put on the screen, but if they can't, I'll read them through anyway. Councillor Sturgis to introduce. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Chair. So this report concerns the proposed establishment of a joint committee called the Berkshire Prosperity Board. Berkshire leaders and chief executives have collectively agreed to establish a Berkshire Prosperity Board to work collaboratively towards economic development, prosperity, health, net zero goals, and also to provide a unified voice for Berkshire. The Thames Valley Local Enterprise Partnership, the LEP, has also been involved in this process. The board, its proposed, will include the 6 Berkshire local authorities, West Berkshire Council, Bracknell Forest Council, Reading Borough Council, Slough Borough Council, the Royal Borough of Windsor Maidenhead and Wokingham Borough Council. The focus will be on 6 priority areas that have been identified by Berkshire leaders: health and inequalities, education and skills, affordable housing, sector development, strategic infrastructure and net zero. And West Berkshire is going to lead on sector development. In terms of funding, the 6 councils will collectively receive £240,000 per year from the government, and this will replace money previously given to the LEP. As you may know, funding for LEPs comes to an end at the end of this month. It's proposed that £80,000 worth of this is allocated to the programme management elements of the board, with the accountable body, which is Wokingham, employing the relevant staff for this. In addition, each authority is being asked to contribute £10,000 of revenue and £20,000 of UK SPF funding in 24-25, which was also previously allocated to the LEP. The Prosperity Board will be set up with funding agreed for 1 year and then reviewed prior to 2025-26. The strategic strength of the unitary authorities working together to make bids to the government for major funding is a key reason for this initiative. Strengthening numbers will give us influence and leverage, and although the county does vary in demand from a largely rural West Berkshire to urban Reading and Slough, we do share historic connections and history and can work well together strategically as we represent all of the people of Berkshire, which is over 900,000 residents. We see the establishment of the board as a positive move and recommend the executive accepts the proposals that are laid out. Thank you.
I'm grateful for that, and I think if Councillor Dim was here, he'd be pleased to second it, because I know he spent a lot of time on this with our chief executive, meeting with the leaders and the other chief executives of Berkshire to bring this into being. So I'd like to thank you for that, Councillor Dillon. I'm going to read out the 2 extra recommendations that I'm not sure are on the actual paperwork. So we're adding 2.4. That executive recommends that council approve the terms of reference for the Berkshire Prosperity Board as set out in Appendix A to be added to the Constitution. So we're recommending to council for that change to the Constitution. And that executive recommends that council delegate authority to the monitoring officer in consultation with the leader of the council to amend the Constitution to make minor amendments to the terms of reference for the Berkshire Prosperity Board and to amend Part 3, meeting rule procedures, and Part 6, council bodies, to take account of the existence of Berkshire Prosperity Board. Without that, it wouldn't have the status within our constitution. So by adding in that 2.4, 2.5, which we're agreeing tonight, 2.1, we approve the establishment of the joint committee. We approve the delegated authority for the chief exec, 2.2. We approve the reallocation of £10,000 of council funding, 2.3. and then we recommend to council 2 points in order to tidy this up within our constitution. That is the adapted recommendation for members. I'm happy to second that. Do we have any other member comments or questions from the executive, please? Okay, I think I'm over to the opposition. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Yeah, very happy with this in principle. Got no issues at all with the concept, and your point around the amending the constitution was well received. The tone of this, though, reads a bit like this is a Berkshire authorities initiative. And we know full well that this is a government initiative. And well, don't shake your head, nod your head. It is a government initiative.
Comprehension, sir.
And participating in this or setting this up unlocks government money that we wouldn't otherwise, wouldn't have access to. So I just think that's a point worth making here, that this is a Conservative government initiative. Well, you give and you take.
I see your direction of travel here, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure that will change the polling up and down the country. Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so members, are we comfortable with that recommendation as amended? I've seconded. So Councillor Sturgis is proposing this. All those in favour, please. Thank you very much indeed. Item 8 then is Building Control Shared Service Agreement, and Councillor Dillon, the leader, is to introduce the report and make an announcement. I think you have it there, sir. It's over to you.
I do. Thank you, Chairman. So following further legal advice received since the report was produced, I believe that Councillor Brooks will propose that we amend recommendation 1.1 to read that the executive approves the council entering into a new shared service agreement for a 5-year period with an option to extend for building control services under sections 9EA and 9EB of the Local Government Act 2000 with Wokingham Borough Council to come into effect from the 1st of April 2024. In addition, every reference to the proposal in the report needs to be read as followed. But so where it states for the Local Government Act 1972, read Local Government Act 2000. And for section 101 of the Local Government Act 1972, read sections 9EA and 9EB of the Local Government Act 2000. Hopefully that's clear, Chairman, and I'll move on to the substantive introduction to the report, if I may.
Thank you. Yes, for the avoidance of doubt, I'll be proposing that as amended. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. So we've been operating in an effective shared building control environment with Wokingham since 2016, and we're now seeking to sign a new 5-year contract to continue that shared arrangement with them. The new Building Safety Act and the Building Safety Regulator's powers, which require all practicing building control surveyors to become registered building inspectors, will come into effect on the 1st of April this year, and the contract must be in place before then. The financial implications of signing the contract are set out in the financial implications section of the report, but in summary, prior to West Berkshire entering the partnership in 2016, the budget for this service totaled 131,000. The cost to West Berks in 2024 will be 80,000, which does not include the £30,000 recharge we received from Wokingham towards management costs. The main driver for the merge is around staffing, as it's notoriously difficult for local authorities to attract surveyors to do this work. It is worth highlighting that over 50% of local authority building control services are in a shared arrangement for this reason. So I'm pleased to note that we've been informed this week that all 5 permanent surveyors have now received their written confirmation from the Building Safety Regulator of their RBI registration. In addition, the 2 supervising surveyors have received their technical manager registration as well. In summary, we have an excellent service delivered through the shared service arrangements. It costs significantly less than it did 8 years ago, and I therefore, if I was in the room, would propose that we accept the recommendations as set out in the report. Happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Have we questions and points from members of the executive, please? And from the Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chair. This seems to me to make total sense in terms of keeping costs under control. But I wonder whether it's possible to discuss under part 2, perhaps, the identity of the third local authority and why it's been delayed, as presumably further cost savings could be made.
I'm back to Councillor Dillon on that. I don't know if you need more time to consider outside of this meeting, or you want to.
Well, it wouldn't be right, Mr. Chairman, to announce the name of the other party. But if Councillor Wollaston looks into the detail of the report, the rationale for them not joining at this time is stipulated, which is following a peer review and recommendations that it's not the appropriate juncture. However, the door will always remain open, and we will be engaging in conversations. Obviously, if anything changes, then we'll bring that back. And I thank Councillor Wollaston for his in-principle support of the paper.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. I would just encourage you to advance those discussions as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the opposition? Okay, members, we're being asked to, this has been proposed by me as amended, seconded by Councillor Gaines. All those in favour, please. Thank you very much indeed. Back with you, Councillor Dillon. Then item 9 is the Hackney carriage tariffs, sir.
Yeah, so the Hackney carriage tariffs, we had a request from a driver, a trade from the taxi trade to increase fares in December. This then went to our licensing committee in January, and we did some informal consultation with the trades. Appendix A in the report is our existing rates, and the table in Appendix B are suggested changes to those rates. So if executive support the principle of going to table B's suggested rates, then what we would then do is go out to consultation. So 2.3 in the report as the recommendation would fall, but 2.4 below would then take place. So we would go out and we would do a full statutory consultation, which would also therefore include getting comments and views from members of the public on those level of fees, not just from the trades themselves. And also, I think it's just important to note, Mr. Chairman, that the fees in table B are at the maximum that a taxi could charge. They have it within their rights to charge less than that if they so wish.
So table B is what we're advocating, but consultation thereof.
Absolutely.
Happy to propose that. Councillor Cottingham will second that. Comments, please, from our executive members. Okay, thank you. Comments from opposition? Okay. Then we will be resolving that, and that will include the consultation, and we'll receive the response from that consultation at another meeting. All those in favour, please. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to my next one. I've lost my place a little bit here. Won't be long. And I'm into what page? No, page is probably about 120 or something. Here we are. Response to garage motion. You're on, Councillor, because it's been a while, hasn't it? I can't remember when you put this in.
2 years, Chairman.
Oh, my word. Okay, with you, sir.
I would like to propose this that this motion be withdrawn in the way that's set out in the report, and I believe I have a seconder.
I'm happy to second, Councillor, because in fact, I think you're recommending the principle of the motion is supported, really, aren't you?
Yeah, indeed. I will go on and explain that, if I may, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, just to remind people, it is a long time, and many of you present now on the council and executive, both sides of the chamber, may not remember what it was all about. I think the background is, I think, well known to many people who have these garage blocks in their ward. Some of them are being perfectly well managed, but when the ones in my own ward at that time was Wash Common were causing a problem, and a number of them were and still are, I thought I'd find out from other ward members if they shared concern, and there was across the board across the parties, across the whole district, there are examples of former garage blocks where no cars are being parked and where they are falling into dereliction and becoming the focus of antisocial behaviour. So it seemed worth calling for discussions to take place locally to see what could be done about it. And those discussions did take place at 2 formal meetings, one each of the Transport Advisory Group and one of the Planning Advisory Group. It was really put into the too difficult pile. And the purpose of this report is to close the matter down as a district-wide policy potential, but not to close the matter down altogether. What I would suggest going forward is that each of us in our wards identify where there might be problems in the future and look at how we might take them forward on a case-by-case basis. The one part of the recommendation of the motion, rather, that I think needs to be kept alive is the one that deals, the final one. If you look at the motion, there were a lot of things that were set out as the reasons why the subject need to be looked at. Garages are too small for cars. Houses are probably too small for all the stuff that we collect over our lives, and therefore we need storage. So what was provided as land for parking of cars is now land for the storing of surplus stuff or use as workshops. There's no use class to cover this. So within current planning law, it's not easy to do anything. And in the wider land law, once some of these pieces of land cease to have an owner that can be identified, we don't have the power in this country to do what's called eminent domain and automatically take control of such land and dispose of it in what we feel is the most successful way. So I do think we need to lobby our MPs for a change in the law to make it easier for local authorities to deal with these problems without having to go through rather expensive procedures. And it's the cost of the procedures that are necessary to deal with each problem that is the reason why I think we've exhausted what we can do through the functions of the motion. So,
which is a disappointment in a way, because we can all picture in our minds garage blocks within housing estates that are quite a blight, actually. They look bad, they hang around, they're not used particularly. You see doors bashed in, they're almost impossible to open. If they're used at all, as you say, it might be storage, but actually I doubt they're much used for storage now, with all the storage places popping up everywhere, Cinch and you name it. There's more storage places now. I don't know what people are keeping in all these storage boxes, but by golly, it's a growth industry. But, you know, they just sit there without us as a council being able to do much with them. And I'm grateful for you bringing that forward, Councillor Vickers. Any other comments from the executive benches, please? And then, yes, Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I think you've been very generous in your support to Councillor Vickers for this paper, for his recommendation. I'm a bit mystified as to the scale of the project. I absolutely recognise the point you make. There are garages which are falling into disrepute, but how many? There's nothing in the paper which says, really, that I can see anyway, which talks about the scale of the problem. It does feel a little bit like Councillor Vickers' hobby horse. Perhaps he had lots of garages in the ward that he represented previously, but perhaps in his more rural ward that he now represents, I'm not quite sure of the scale of the problem. So I haven't got an issue with it, but it seems a bit odd that a member of the executive is bringing forward a recommendation that you take action on the motion that he brought in 2 years ago. Are you really going to be lobbying MPs to do something about this? Can't see.
Well, we might, depending on what party they are. But
any party,
you know,
surely that's party neutral, isn't it?
Whatever party they are, I said that. Whatever party they are. But just because Councillor Vickers was in opposition when he put the motion in, what would you suggest? Now he's actually on the front bench. He shouldn't take the motion forward. The key point to remember, and you've been a councillor in Thatcham, I can see those garage blocks in Thatcham, and they're a blight in those estates, sir. So I would have thought, forgetting rural versus urban, where they exist, they're actually not good at all. And sometimes that land could be used much more purposefully, I would suggest. Back to you, Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, just to answer the question, what is the scale of the problem? I think it is substantial. I would be surprised if there wasn't a single ward in this district, or indeed most districts, most boroughs in the country, where initially, and what Hart District Council did at the time they ceased to have council housing, and a lot of these were in council estates, which were then passed to either an arm's length company or totally privatized. But what was in retrospect, it's always easy in hindsight to see what should have happened. But Hart District Council, because I had discussions with people whose professional job is to manage garage blocks, and this particular Reading-based company was managing all the garage blocks in Hart District Council and managing them well, often as storage, so they were not becoming a blight. That wasn't done here, and I'm not blaming anybody. I can't remember. It was probably under a previous Liberal Democrat district council as a second tier. I don't know, but we can't always forecast the future that the cars are going to be 18% wider than they were at the time those garage blocks were built, for example. So it is a substantial nationwide problem. It does need national legislation. I think we have a government, and it's not just this government, but all governments tend to get on their hobby horses and deal with legislation that perhaps doesn't have the priority that they think it has. And the things that really need sorting, and this is one which affects a lot of people up and down the country, aren't attended to. So I'm happy to recommend that you recommend or support the recommendation in the paper, but not let the issue die entirely. You might see a motion calling on MPs to do something in the near future. Cheers.
From this side of the table, I think Councillor Boak wants to come back, and then Councillor Sommer.
No,
No, you're okay.
he's defeated me.
Oh my word! Oh my word! Will you make a note of that? Do minute that, please. Councillor Sommer.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it is unusual, I'm sure, to be answering your own motion, especially so far down the line. But indeed, well done for continuing down the path of trying to address it. I think part of the issue with the way the motion was initially set out and the reason that there were delays in the conversations that took place is that actually what you've got is two very different things. And you've just highlighted yourself that there are a couple of points at the end of your list there, which aren't actually necessarily garage block. They're about reserving parking spaces. It's might be semantics, it might be design, but for my technicality, it's a slightly different thing. And if you're trying to put EV parking spaces in a garage block, then you're going to be blocking somebody's garage by default if you're not careful. Otherwise, the block itself is going to have to be a hell of a footprint on it. I'll be cautious how I say this one. Many, I suspect, will be supportive of new developments addressing it in a very different way. My car is parked in a garage block, is parked outside the garage. But a valid point to remember when you pursue this is that some people put motorbikes in garage. It's not all about cars going in garages. And the reason my car won't go in the garage, apart from the amount of clutter that's in there, is because my motorbike's in there. It couldn't have both. It would never have had both, even if I had a tiny car. So we need to be mindful of things like that. Car owners and homeowners should have the opportunity to park their vehicle somewhere safe and stored, whether that's an independent garage rather than a garage block, or whether it's a carport. And I know that we've got a mix of designs that have come through in applications over the years, which will address both of those. Personally, no, I'm not a massive fan of garage blocks. I do see them in my ward, and there are various issues that do come up. One of the things that is used to address it is taking down the brick walls that are put around the outside of them and making them open, because then actually everybody can see what happens in the garage block that lives near the garage block. People don't like parking where they can't see their car. That's the issue. And I think that is something that should be addressed more through application design than lobbying MPs who 9 out of 10 probably won't even recognise the problem as a relevant thing to them. I think taking it to them, if that's what your choice is, then so be it. But I think actually it's something through planning, when you look at the design of a development, that could and should be addressed. What does concern me is the message that goes out to our residents. I have colleagues, friends that have been approached by developers to buy their garage off them because they want to develop, not just because they want to reduce antisocial, but because they want to clout them down and put a house there. We need to be very careful of that message. We also need to be careful, you need to be careful, it's not we anymore, it's you need to be careful of the message that says that there might be any thought about compulsory purchase or anything along those lines. People, as I said, should have the opportunity to have that as part of their property.
Come back,
Yes.
Chairman. I mean, this really came to a focus as Councillor Abbs and Councillor Marsh will remember, in our ward, when exactly what you said happened. A developer did get hold of a garage block that was not being used in a 1950s housing development with very narrow roads and no on-street parking possible, and got planning consent despite several appeals. At the time, it was actually a ward held by one of your colleagues. And this made me think that there must be a different way around this. Maybe in planning law, a separate use class for garage blocks. But the problem is not how we deal with developments going forward, Chairman, colleagues. It's about how we deal with the problem we've inherited from a very different world 70 years ago, where not everybody had a car, and they were much smaller, and there wasn't such a need as there is now with no public transport in many areas to own a car. And I just think we've got to think of better ways to deal with those that are not being well managed. And I'll leave it at that, James.
Yeah, I think we're there. Let's remind ourselves, you've proposed it. I'm happy to second. It is recommended that the principle of motion is supported. The motion can be delivered through the case-by-case assessment of forthcoming planning applications to redevelop garage blocks through the application of existing and emerging local plan policies and through council-led highway schemes as appropriate. The council will lobby MPs and the local government association for a change to legislation when necessary to facilitate the requirements of the motion. So it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please, on the executive. Thank you very much indeed. Next one, contracts for award under delegated authority from executive. We will actually take the vote in part 2 of the meeting. So what we're doing now, and I'm proposing this, I think Councillor Gaines is seconding, is we are looking to delegate authority to an individual service director to proceed with the award of the contract in table 4.7. And of course, going to table 4.7, you see the Four Houses Corner Traveller site, main construction. So it went through the planning process. I've got Councillor Dillon.
It was just, these are the items I've got an interest on, Mr. Chairman, so I'll leave the meeting at this point. I haven't got any members' questions submitted for me to answer either.
Very good. Thank you very much and have a good evening. So members, we are being asked to delegate authority to get on with this project. It's been through planning only last week. Proposed and seconded. Do I have any comments or from the executive? And do I have any from the opposition? I think we're there in terms of needing to get on with this, but we're not voting for it here. We'll come back to it in part 2. Restrictive covenants and restriction on title, Wimwell Court and Stafford House, Mortimer. Councillor Cottingham, you'll introduce this report, please.
I will. Thank you very much, Chair. So this report details out the recommendations that the executive delegate the authority to the head of finance and property in consultation with the housing services manager and the adult social care manager to enter in negotiations with Sovereign Housing to agree heads of terms for the release of the covenants and restrictions in favour of the council for the purpose of Sovereign's redevelopment of the site and the negotiation of the new nomination rights and covenants in favour of the council relating to the redevelopment scheme. To delegate authority to the Service Director of Strategy and Governance in consultation with the Head of Finance and Property to enter into such agreements as are appropriate and necessary in line with the negotiated heads of terms. And finally, to reject the requests detailed in the petition for the reasons set out in the report. So within the report, section 6 details out the fact that the covenants themselves run out in 2026. In section 4.2, it gives detail that the fact that there are currently 35 mainly single occupational properties within the actual Windmill Court Stafford House. The proposal is to move to 24 multiple affordable development, multi-occupancy development. That will potentially house roughly over 100 people. Within sections 518 to 520, that details out. However, there are 5 individuals who are currently housed within Windmill Court Stafford House. Sovereign are currently trying to find a location to rehouse these individuals in an area close to where they are. At the moment, they are struggling, but from my perspective, the fact that obviously we can't move on until they've been properly rehoused, we can't be seen to be forcing out these individuals from their existing housing. But as I say, going forward, we're looking to remove the restricted covenants on this particular properties.
Very good. And again, the voting will take place in part 2 of the meeting, so we're introducing it here. I'm happy to second this and look for comments from the executive and then comments from across Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you. I'm probably, I suspect, the only person in this chamber that's actually seen this properly. When I had the portfolio. Essentially, I agree that it needs to be redeveloped. There's no issue there. But I've got a few questions which I suspect you may need to refer back to officers because I suspect you don't know the answer. Firstly, is Stafford House being retained for the existing tenants? Secondly, in paragraph 5.12, it says nomination rights for 6 two-bed bungalows. No, he's right, it's bungalows. They are, I assume, being retained. And finally, last one, sorry, section 5.22, what does secured under all section 106 agreement mean? And finally, there seems to be a conflict between whether there's a requirement for extra care or not between sovereign and council officers. I'd like some explanation on that.
Okay, number of questions there. We can, Joseph has deserted you as well, by the looks of it. So we might pick them up in part 2.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Any other questions in part 1 now? Okay, we're not voting on this. We're noting it and moving it into part 2. Thank you. I think we go on to members' questions. So Sadie will start to put them on the screen. First one up for Councillor Tony Vickers. And I'm happy for, I think, Councillor Bogue, are you putting this in Councillor McKinnon's absence? Yeah.
Yes, I'm very happy to answer this question put by Councillor McKinnon. However, I'm not quite sure the residents of the district are as interested in these hypothetical questions as they are in what will actually happen as the inspector's examination of the new local plan proceeds, which of course it now is. But before I give a short answer to your question, I just want to explain why I'm not, well, it will explain the answer when I come to it. I mean, take Wash Common, going to the polls today, many residents there still blame the previous administration for inflicting 15 years of blight on them so far, with not one new home started since the last local plan allocated Sandalford Park. Because and this does, as I say, have a bearing on my answer in a minute. As a direct result of Sandalford failing to progress, we got North Newbury delivered first, as was predicted by the Lib Dems at the time in 2010, despite being rejected from the plan. Your leader at the time was a ward member and did nothing to make the best of a bad job there. Also, largely because there is still nothing to show at Sandalford, we do still need the 1,500 houses that were allocated to go there. all of which the current plan said would be occupied by now. And all this under a Conservative council, aided by, I have to say, a rather dysfunctional and unfair national planning system that gives all the power to the landowners and the major national developers, many of which happen to be major contributors to your party. So where are you putting those where are you having to put those 1,500 homes now in your local plan? Well, North East Thatcham. And I bet the voters there will show their disdain for you today. So the simple answer to your question about who would I have blamed when they started asking questions about how things turned out in Thatcham, and it's very difficult to give a hypothetical answer to a hypothetical question, but I simply don't know. It's far too early to say. And it's really not worth thinking about, frankly. Do you have a supplementary?
Well, you're now Councillor McKinnon's supplementary.
Yes, I know.
This is telepathy between you.
I know. Yes, and it's difficult, but I'm going to make a comment of my own, if you don't mind. You gave us a whole speech about how beastly the Tories are, and then at the end of it all, you said, "Well, I don't know what the answer is." It does seem a bit kind of opportunistic, Councillor Vickers, but at least this time you have deigned us with an answer to your question. So I thank you for that deeply. I'm not going to ask you anything more, because I don't want to give you another opportunity to give a rant.
No, you haven't got another opportunity.
No, but I did offer answers, and I gave written answers, and you had the opportunity to answer the last batch of questions, or Mr. Councillor McKinnon and others did, but you chose not to. You know, I could have been answering last month's questions now, and it wouldn't have made a difference. It's all hypothetical, and you know, time is not of the essence in these matters.
Okay. Now it's you. You're you now. The next.
Thank you. Yeah. And wait a minute.
Okay. Next one up, please.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Berwick. At the risk of repeating what was said at our recent full council meeting, when our budget for 24-25 was approved, we have made available £250,000 in the coming year for the design of the project and to get planning approval done. We will work as quickly as possible to get these buildings completed. All funds needed in this coming year are already in place via SIL and Section 106 monies, as previously stated. Our leader has personally assured you that we will fast track this project and the funds will be there. Any fury should perhaps be directed towards earlier administrations who didn't replace these buildings, say 10 years ago, when it would have been apparent that they were starting to become dilapidated. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for that answer. You know, because I've seen the correspondence, that parents and residents of Falkland are really disappointed that you did not support our amendment to bring forward in the capital programme the spend this year and next year. That would have sent a message to the electorate, to your residents, beg your pardon, to residents and parents, that you really mean business. Now, I'm just going to go on to another slightly different point. You mentioned at the beginning, I'm not going to challenge you. You mentioned at the beginning, you spoke about honesty and respect and everything, and I completely agree with that. You're not being truthful with the residents of Falkland when you say that, I've lost it now, in your documentation, that the Lib Dems that you're fighting tonight's by-election on, the Lib Dems passed the budget with the necessary funds brought forward to enable the work to be expedited. You did not.
Hold on.
That's not a question.
I'm going to pick this up a little bit, if I may, and I think I've got chairman's privilege. You keep going on about the capital not being there. That's what your premise is, that we needed to actually allocate some capital. You've heard tonight that we're actually £12.9 million down on our capital spend to date, called Q3, in this year. The capital is sitting there, sir. It can be wired very, very easily. And I don't know quite how you're taking that to people in Wash Common and making a thing of it when we have given assurance, if we can build it in time, the money will be there. Let's get down to the facts. The money will be there, and you're trying to make some story out of a technicality, frankly. Back to you, Councillor Colling, for the supplementary.
I honestly don't have anything to add. The money will be there. We will move the project on as fast as we can.
Correct. I'm moving on. Councillor Marsh is not here, so he'll get a written answer.
Yes, he's offered his apologies. He sent apologies and asked for written.
Very good. And then Councillor McKinnon is going to be Councillor Berwick again to Councillor Vickers.
My answer to Councillor McKinnon, Councillor Berwick, is not really. I don't really agree. And as I illustrated in my answer to your last question, an up-to-date local plan is of limited value. In my experience, over 20 years on this council and in my academic work in a former life relating to planning, I've seen that most new homes delivered are on sites that are actually not allocated. In less prosperous areas than ours, councils don't even bother to make a local plan because it's not worth the effort. They want the development and they can still rely on the NPPF. So it's really a plan-led system, whether you have a local plan or not. But for West Berkshire, where there is a particularly high demand, we're a popular, prosperous area. Therefore, we get eye-wateringly high-value greenfield land being put forward by developers and landowners who will make an enormous profit from gaining planning consent. So yes, we'd like to be able to control development, and that's why we do spend what we can afford on plan making. But it's an unenviable struggle with unequal resources. And major developers can and do massively outspend us on the plan making and indeed during the development management process in order to get their way. And hence we lose appeals even when, as with Sandalford, a site was allocated. So I'm relaxed about getting more houses as long as they're affordable for those that need them and not just to buy, but to maintain and to live in, and that they're located, designed and built well with all the necessary infrastructure delivered on time. So yes, we need a plan-led system, and for us it must be a local plan, but the local plan is not a panacea, and we wouldn't and shouldn't give up on managing development just because we don't have one. So not having one limits our ability to manage development. I accept that, but it doesn't totally undermine it. Do you have a supplementary?
No. Okay, so we're back with you then for question E. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Councillor Burke, for your question. This feels a bit like comparing apples and oranges, and I don't believe it would have been a waste of money to have corrected the wrongs in the local plan that you recklessly and hastily submitted. The recruitment of necessary professionals to take this project forward was delayed by the long-needed financial controls we had to put into place to assist this administration balance the in-year budget. Within 8 weeks of coming into power, we were facing an £8 million overspend. Therefore, it was not about the willingness of the authority, but the availability of the financial resource at the time to secure the workforce. I can confirm that a project manager has started this week, and I understand more are being recruited. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for your reply, and I'm pleased to hear that a project manager has been recruited. But I'd just like to, I'd ask you just to expand a little bit on the comment that you made when you spoke about the reckless submission of the plan that was 5 years in the making, that was developed through cross-party consultation, and which as recently as December, Councillor Vickers said in public that he saw no reason why it shouldn't be brought forward. Could you expand a bit on that? Reckless.
I can, because as a representative of a ward that is adjacent to the potential buildings in Thatcham, the North East Thatcham plan, that was definitely reckless. Cold Ash and Hermitage and Intercheveley will be inundated by traffic, and there are not the resources or the infrastructure going in. So I actually absolutely do say it is reckless.
Okay, I think that's asked and answered. The next one is Councillor Marshall, will be a written answer. Councillor Bowick is Councillor McKinnon. Question E, G, please.
Well, yes. another hypothetical question on the local plan, which we have not been allowed to withdraw, but which has yet to be found sound by the inspector. So my hypothetical answer, hypothetically, yes, maybe I could have agreed with you, but I'd have been quite relaxed about this because actually it's going to have to happen anyway, because the plan period is now going to be longer because of what I think fair to call a miscalculation under the previous administration a year ago, because we now have a plan that have to be carried forward to 2041, not 2039. So that's going to be 1,000 or more homes that needs to be in that local plan. But 2041 being a long way away, and as I've said in previous answers, plans are of limited value. We will be starting to prepare another local plan as soon as this one's adopted. But meanwhile, there are risks in the closing years of the current plan and through into the first years of the one about to be examined. Risks about whether the houses will be delivered at the rate expected. That's in the hands of the developers, not ours. And consequently about whether we will need to revise the numbers upwards. But finally, let's remind ourselves that the LPR, the new plan, is not yet found sound. So this is all very hypothetical. You have supplementary.
Okay. The next one, David Marsh again. That's written, and the final one from Councillor Boat. Here's me, I think. That's right. Well, I think what disappoints me about this, and I don't have a prepared answer, but that you consider, Councillor Boat, Councillor McKinnon now, that the Joint Public Protection Partnership, Public Safety generally, building communities together, emergency planning is a tiny portfolio. That suggests, frankly, you don't take it very seriously. You really don't take that very seriously. We do. And I am very satisfied that the people of West Berkshire are receiving value for money from every executive role. I am comfortable with it. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Councillor McKinnon, and I would echo his views if he were to say this, that we take the importance of public safety, of that element of portfolio, very seriously. My colleague, Councillor Williston, will speak at length about how much more he did when he had the portfolio alongside public safety. It is a small part of what the council does, and it does seem somewhat anomalous that Councillor Dillon is drawing down £10,000 a year for what we consider to be a very small part of the executive's responsibilities.
So that was a statement, and I'm moving on. We're moving into part 2, I believe. How do I do that officially, Nikki? I'm proposing that we move to part 2. I'm seconded by Councillor Gaines. In some places, I've actually had to read out the legislation, Nikki. Do I have to do that here?
We agree by voting that
Yeah.
the press and public leave.
We're agreeing by voting that the press and the public leave the room in accordance with Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Is that agreed? Please show. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody.
Councillor Hooker could say.
Yes, yes. Last time I looked, you weren't a member of the public.
We did check and then I had to look.
Oh, well, not.
It's me.
Oh,
I was just checking, sorry. You're right, I did check while I was in the meeting, apologies.
right. That's sorted then. Let's get back to the business. So we come back to the contracts for